In game, all of the Valorant agents are on an equal playing field. I mean, Cypher is just a guy with a camera, but even he can technically beat Astra, a cosmic guardian. I'm certainly downplaying his abilities there, but you can see how within the lore of this game, some of these agents are nowhere near equal. So today I'm going to be ranking every Valorant agent from weakest to strongest, based on how powerful they actually are in the lore. I do need to quickly define what I mean by power though, because this list isn't as simple as who beats who in a 1v1. When I'm looking at each agent's strength, I'm going to be considering things like their abilities, destructive potential, speed, durability, and experience. I will mostly focus on the present and past rather than the future of what an agent becomes too, but there are a few special cases that I'll cross when we get to them. Potential does obviously matter, but I don't want this list to be based entirely on hypotheticals and alternate timelines. So wherever possible, I'm going to be going off of what we actually know, what the agents have done and are shown to be capable of, and how those abilities compare to the other agents. Also, I just wanted to quickly give credit to Necrit and Kinda Subpar, as both of these videos inspired me to make this one. With all that being said, let's kick things off with who I reckon is the weakest agent in the Valorant protocol.
Watch out, way. My crew is coming through.
This low placement for Gekko is due to a combination of him having very little experience, but also fairly weak powers. Most, if not all, the human agents have some form of military background and training, while the Radiants are either just clearly stronger or have had lots of time with their abilities. Compared to them, Gekko essentially stumbled across his Radivores, and that's the only reason he's here. The bond he has with these creatures is definitely valuable, but how powerful are any of these guys really? Sure, Wingman is useful in game, but from a lore perspective, he's basically just a little guy that any agent would be able to handle. Then Dizzy and Mosh are probably both even less of a factor than him as well. Thrash is for sure the strongest of the lot, but I don't think she is enough to change Gekko's placement for me. Detaining someone and stopping them from doing, well, anything for a brief moment of time is nothing to scoff at, but then again, from what we know, Thrash isn't that durable. We've seen it only takes a few bullets to take her out. Like I alluded to earlier, Gekko also has no weapons background on top of his subpar abilities. Obviously, every agent in Valorant can use guns, they all get training regularly, but if I had to guess who is the least experienced with weapons in the protocol, Gekko would probably be one of my first picks. With him, there's no superb marksmanship or years in the military, he's just a kid who found and bonded with some Radivores. For Gekko to really be dangerous, it's less about raw power and more about the setup, teamwork, and good positioning. Funnily enough, that idea of teamwork and setup ties pretty well into today's sponsor. Before we continue, I want to quickly talk about this new free-to-play game called Tier. Tier is a multiplayer tank shooter where you're piloting heavy armored vehicles, upgrading them throughout the match, and trying to win fights through better positioning, setup, and strategy. That's the main thing that stood out to me here. A lot of shooters just reward you for swinging first, but Tier is a lot more focused on strategy. All the decisions that you make matter, and if you're just driving straight into fights, you're probably going to get punished pretty quickly. Each tank also has its own armor profile, tech tree, ammo slots, component upgrades, and even their own unique ability. Once you max out a tank, you can unlock these keystone tech variations that change how you play even further. One of the more interesting systems in Tier is the asymmetric vision. If you position correctly, you can spot enemies for your team without them necessarily being able to see you back. This just adds another layer to how you take fights. Because Tier leans more into sci-fi than pure simulation, they can get a little weirder with their tanks as well. One example they showed is a Vito tank that can literally transform into a Jett, which is definitely not something you see in a typical tank shooter. It's also built around fair competition. The game is free to play and there are no pay to win aspects, so everyone is on a level playing field. If you're interested in competitive games that reward positioning, strategy, and slower, more deliberate fights, check out Tier using the link below.
Relax, I've already thought of everything.
You might be surprised to see Killjoy this low. Don't get me wrong, if this ranking factored in more intelligence, inventions, or overall value to the team, she would be up quite a lot higher. Unfortunately, in terms of more direct, personal, or combat power, I think Killjoy falls short compared to the rest. For a start, she's one of the youngest agents in the protocol, and even though she's a genius, she's more of an inventor than a fighter. Similar to Gekko, there's no military background or combat-heavy past here. She's only dangerous because of what she can create, not because she's naturally one of the strongest in the room. I do feel like I need to give Killjoy her flowers still, as she's created a lot of what we see and use in game. The spike, the diffuser, Brimstone's iPad, and even Deadlock's arm were all made by Killjoy. She even pioneered the portal between worlds. But in a fight, or what she can do on the spot, is pretty limited. So much of Killjoy's strength depends on prep time. At the end of the day, she's just a human with some gadgets. Her turret is handy, but it's not exactly a high-end weapon. Same goes for both the alarm bot and the nanoswarms. then yeah, you've got her lockdown, but that's more area denial as opposed to any damage or destruction. So again, I do acknowledge that she is one of the most instrumental people within the protocol, but she's also surely one of the physically weakest.
Nothing stays hidden from me. Nothing.
While you might think the two agents I've already covered have stronger abilities than Cypher, this isn't some inexperienced recruit. He's an information broker with a dark and mysterious past, and a lot about him suggests that he's been operating in dangerous circles for a long time. He's careful, ruthless, and most importantly, not helpless in a fight. In the Reckoning cinematic, for example, we can see how easily he takes out these hourglass operatives. Clearly, he is capable of handling himself under pressure. Cypher's kit is obviously one of the most grounded, but by no means is he a pushover. All of these abilities are built around surveillance. Between various tricks and traps, he knows everything about you while limiting what you know about him. It almost goes without saying that his gadgets pale in comparison to Killjoy's, but I still think Cypher can be perceived as more powerful due to his experience, plus of course we've actually seen him able to hold his own. Still, in the grand scheme of things, it's not quite enough to push him any higher on a list filled with Radiance or more explosive agents.
No one can hold their breath forever.
I do feel a little bad putting Viper and all these brains over brawn type characters down here, but at the very least, she does feel more threatening than the other agents I've covered so far. Don't forget that she was able to defend herself from Omen's assassination attempt, and even turned him into the monster that we love today. She also canonically got the better of Brimstone in that cinematic earlier this year. The only reason I still have Brimstone above her, which I'll obviously talk more about when we get to him, comes down to his, whole satellite laser beam alongside extensive experience. Viper's work does feel more dangerous than Cypher or Killjoy's though, since they're more about gathering information. Instead, Viper opts to use chemical launchers, gas emitters, and controlled toxins that she understands better than anyone else. A lot of her strength comes from how precisely she can control the environment. She doesn't necessarily need to overpower you physically if she can just make the air itself hazardous to breathe in. The reason I have Viper falling so short though is because her powers are relatively limited. She's physically human, and while yeah, her toxins are dangerous, it's just a gas at the end of the day. She does have a few feats in the lore like I mentioned earlier, but nothing like what we've physically seen some of the other agents do. I can't deny how brilliant of a chemist and scientist she is, but for the way I'm ranking the agents in this video, she ultimately, again, falls pretty short.
Yes, I'm pumped!
While Raze is not a Radiant, she certainly makes up for it with her firepower. She's a tinkerer, engineer, and most importantly, a demolitions expert. Her entire identity is built around chaos. Lore-wise, Raze has a solid background too. Beyond just driving Kingdom out of our hometown, she's even operated outside of the lore with Breach before. How much exactly we don't know, but she's clearly experienced dangerous missions and things like that, rather than being a new recruit like Gekko or a lab rat like Killjoy. She even has her own impressive tech too. She handmade her boombot by modifying one of Killjoy's alarm bots. Then her blast packs give her additional mobility and explosive pressure, and then of course she just has a bunch of extra grenades and a literal rocket launcher. So in terms of destructive capability, Raze has one of the clearest arguments so far. That measurable strength is also her shortcoming for now though, because her power is pretty limited. Sure, she can blow things up and overwhelm people with her explosions, but she is not throwing fire or tearing through dimensions.
Death is not an option.
Deadlock has a fairly strong combat background. Rather than just being a scientist or information broker, she was an elite hunter or Stoljager before joining the protocol. This is important because similar to Raze, Deadlock was already handling dangerous missions and things of that sort well before the Valorant protocol ever contacted her. Her biggest feat that we've seen is fighting the Rat of War Bear. She was able to survive this encounter that wiped out the rest of her unit. Even though it cost her an arm, the fact that she made it out at all is impressive and immediately gives her a strong argument for being durable and experienced. She's also more than just a fighter though. Like a lot of the other agents around here on the list, Deadlock created all of her own equipment, adding another layer to her skill set. Her gear is all about containment, restriction, and punishing movement. She's not trying to overwhelm you with sheer destruction like Raze, instead she's trying to trap you. This is the perfect setup for her ultimate, because if you can't move, you're a pretty easy target. Using a nanowire accelerator, she sends out a powerful spooling, trapping anyone in its place. If you get caught inside this yourself, there's nothing you can do but die. The reason I can't place her much higher is because while her equipment is impressive, she's no Radiant. Her tools are all homemade and grounded rather than being anything supernatural. I'm sure I already sound like a broken record at this point, but the reality is I'm just trying to apply the same logic to all of these agents.
They think I'm an old dog? I'll show them just how many tricks I know.
Now, being pretty much the oldest agent on the protocol, Brimstone might lose in a fistfight to some of the agents below him on this list. What he lacks in physical prowess, however, he makes up for with extensive wisdom, leadership, and some of the strongest military technology available to anyone on this list. Even though he's old though, don't forget that before joining Valorant, Brimstone had a long background as a firefighter, soldier, and commander. Beyond just knowing how to shoot, he's someone that can lead a team, control the battlefield, and make decisions under pressure. That sort of battle IQ is going to matter a lot, especially when we're comparing him to some of the younger and less experienced agents. His stim beacon and incendiary aren't anything revolutionary, but his satellite tech with the Skye smokes and especially orbital strike are where things get interesting. This ability on its own puts Raze to shame and is one of the clearest destructive feats we see from any of the more grounded agents. So while his age might stop him from being one of the fastest or strongest agents physically, his orbital technology pushes the limits of what some of the humans on this list are capable of.
New weapons. Same war.
Tejo, I think, only makes sense to come right after Brimstone because they have a very similar history, even having worked together in the past. Tejo is a veteran intelligence consultant, so like Brimstone, he has a serious tactical background. The main reason to me that Tejo is above Brimstone is because he feels a little bit more aggressive. I think it's fair to put Orbital Strike and Armageddon at similar levels of power. They're both wide area of effects, where a massive amount of firepower comes raining down from above. But Tejo goes a little bit beyond that, with his guided salvos raining down more missiles on anywhere he chooses with an AR targeting setup. Even his stealth drone is actually a surprising feat on its own, using suppression technology, which is a big deal within the world of Valorant. While we're all familiar with KO and his capabilities, don't forget that he's from the future. Tejo's drone is the first piece of utility that we see from modern times, utilizing suppression technology, so this is quite literally state-of-the-art tech. He doesn't show his age quite as much as Brimstone, and I reckon he has measurably stronger abilities, so I'm happy with his placement here.
Wherever they run, I will find them.
Sova might not seem as flashy or explosively powerful compared to some of the agents we've covered already, but when we begin to look at his actual lore and feats, the stronger his case gets. First of all, he's an elite hunter and marksman, but he's also so much more than just a guy with a bow. Not only does he never miss a shot, his bow is infused with Radianite enhanced technology, allowing him to shoot out recon bolts, shock bolts, and even Hunter's Fury, which is just a blast of pure energy that goes through walls. To me, this is the main reason why he's above Brim and Tejo. They have powerful military technology, but that's borderline believable and makes sense. Like, look at Tejo's ultimate and you're like, a bunch of bombs being dropped out from the sky, that makes sense. On the other hand, Sova's ultimate feels like a step above those. These abilities combined give him an edge in both range and attack potency that most of the other agents covered so far simply don't have. Sova has also been through the ringer. He has experience with the Interverse and Rifts, so he's not just a normal soldier that's been on your average missions. He's already dealt with the alternate worlds multiple times, and even fought his own mirror counterpart. This flashback from the While We Fight Back cinematic shows us the aftermath of him decimating an enemy unit with his ultimate, and then cutting out Omega Sova's eye. So while he's certainly no superhuman, I do think Sova is clearly above most of the more standard tech-based agents.
Stand in my way. I dare you.
Breach is where this list begins to get physically overwhelming. He may not be radiant, but his capabilities exceed what any normal human or technology can do. Before we get to those powers though, it's worth pointing out that Breach was a career criminal before joining the protocol. He is violent and experienced, comfortable wrecking his way through whatever stands in his way. Not even just physically in fact, but mentally too. He was a double congenital amputee at birth who had to build his own mechanical arms. Raze later on helped upgrade these to have carbon steel titanium plating. Even though his power comes from technology, it's tech that's directly built into him. Not only that, but almost all of his abilities are built around seismic quakes. Aftershock sends blast through walls, and Flashpoint lets him blind enemies through any surface. Faultline sends out a concussive quake, and then Rolling Thunder amplifies that same concept with enough force to launch people up into the air. He's also simply one of the most physically intimidating agents within the protocol. Beyond just his arms, he's the tallest agent on the roster, so he's really a force to be reckoned with. The reason he doesn't end up any higher to me on this list is because we don't really see his seismic blasts scaling to anything beyond battlefield level destruction. It's not like he's actually causing earthquakes at a tectonic level, merely replicating their effects in a much smaller area.
You have good taste, my friend.
Chamber is another non-radiant agent, but compared to most of the more grounded humans, he has a much stronger argument for being genuinely lethal. He's got a background of being a weapons designer, a former Kingdom Defense employee, and even a history with the French military. His skill set is incredibly clear. Chamber is precise, experienced, and extremely dangerous at range. The biggest thing that separates him from agents like Cypher or Killjoy is that Chamber's technology is built directly to kill people. He's not entirely focused on gathering information or setting up traps, although of course he does have his trademark. Most of his handiwork are these custom designed weapons, which basically make up his entire identity. You see, Headhunter and Tour de Force are built with radionite technology, so they're far more deadly than your average gun. Then you add in his rendezvous with nanotech, which is another huge advantage. Sure, he needs to place it down and put it somewhere in advance, but it can still disappear at a moment's notice, which is an insanely strong ability for both mobility and survivability. No other agent up until now has had anything close to this. Lore-wise, he also has the feat of destroying Fracture. The two counterparts work together and shot at the same place at the same time to sabotage the facility. Ultimately, I think Chamber suffers from being somewhat of a glass cannon and being a single target specialist. He's certainly not one of the most destructive agents on this list, but he's definitely one of the most dangerous people to be targeted by.
Let's make some noise!
Mix is a hard one. He's our first step into agents with natural radiant power, but he's also the newest agent, so we have very few examples to go off of for what he can actually do. From what we do know, his body itself releases sound waves, and those vibrations can have physiological effects on the people around him. While these abilities may not be purely destructive, they are still affecting people directly. Basequake is so loud it forcibly moves you, throws off all your senses, so you can't move, hear, or really respond at all. His high-tech gloves are also important, as they let him moderate or amplify the sound coming from his body. There is also a supportive element to Mix that makes him a little bit harder to compare to the other agents too. For example, if we're comparing Breach and Raze, you can just look at who makes the bigger explosion and call it a day. Mix, on the other hand, can not only speed up himself and allies, but also heal them too. Like, don't get me wrong, healing is an undeniably strong ability, but it's sort of hard to know how to place it compared to just, again, measurable destruction. Ultimately, Mix lands here because I think the extra healing elements make him stronger than anyone we've talked about so far. So while his known feats are incredibly limited, a Sonic Radiant who can release powerful sound waves from his body is never really going to be that weak.
I've got all the time in the world.
Clove is another incredibly difficult agent to rank because immortality is a pretty nuanced topic. Being able to simply come back from the dead is an absurd power. According to Astra, immortality is basically unheard of amongst Radiants, and there is some seriously concerning potential for Clove's ceiling down the line. As much as I can acknowledge how strong being unkillable is, I don't think Clove actually offers any other strong abilities to justify a higher placement on this list. Sure, they come back to life, but then what? They can throw a piece of immortality essence at you to temporarily make you weak, and that's about it. From the Sanctum of Secrets trailer, I was pretty surprised at how competent Clove seemed with weapons, because again, compared to most agents, they haven't been here for as long, nor will they have any sort of shooting background. I do also think it's worth noting that Clove offers up some of their own life energy for Reyna's sister. So it doesn't seem like Clove's power is as simple as they just come back when they die, and instead there is something much deeper going on with life and death. Within the lore, we know that it's possible for Clove to come back to life without needing to take the life essence from someone, however, doing that just helps speed up the process. It's also worth pointing out that it's a big point within Clove's lore that the longer they spend in that junction between life and death, the harder it becomes for them to return. Again, immortality in Clove though is just a weird one. I think in the grand scheme of things they're pretty weak, which is why I'm leaving them down here, but at the end of the day they are immortal, so who on this list is going to be able to kill them? But yeah, on top of that, I think they're just too inexperienced and still learning, not being able to do much in a normal fight. Long term, they absolutely have the highest ceiling out of anyone on the protocol, but for now, I think Clove lands here.
Just take a seat. I got this.
Phoenix is one of the easier Radiants to understand from a power perspective, since his abilities are pretty direct. He creates fire, throws out blinds, can heal from his own flames, and even prevents himself from being killed. That alone puts him in a pretty strong spot. He doesn't rely on technology for any of this either. This is all inherently part of him. During First Light, when he got these powers, he accidentally set his school ablaze. So there's clearly a degree of mastery to his abilities here, but fire in itself is a force to be reckoned with. Phoenix does also have a massive argument for durability between healing from his flames and being able to revive himself. It's not quite the same as Clove's immortality because he has to plan it in advance, but still, this is in combination with all the other flame hurling, which is why I put him above Clove. There's simply more that he can do. Having said that, I do think Phoenix has his limits and has a long way to go. It wasn't that long ago that we saw him freezing up in battle, and before that, he wasn't known for being the most disciplined agent. In fact, he was pretty reckless at times. He doesn't have many feats in the lore just yet, but I can't ignore the innate power in all that fire, so I'm leaving Phoenix here.
Cool, let's go.
We've got the poster girl of Valorant next, who has a pretty dynamic power. Compared to Phoenix, who's a lot more direct with his fire, Jett's wind manipulation gives her advantages in speed, movement, precision, and evasion. By being able to manipulate the wind around herself, she's one of the most agile agents in the protocol. She can dash forward, lift herself up in the air, slow her falls, and reposition in ways that most agents simply can't keep up with. This goes beyond just movement though, as she proves to have a very fine level of control over the wind with her blade storm. Anything from simply levitating and spinning the knife in her hand, to then flinging them forward at breakneck speeds. Within the lore, it's said that Jett caused a freak storm which destroyed the restaurant she used to work at, forcing her to run away. The only slight doubt I have over this though, is that we know for a fact that this was the result of a fight between Alpha Jett and Omega Jett. I wouldn't say that there is enough proof here that this storm is something that Jett on her own can directly cause, and instead was the result of how the counteracting winds went against each other. Overall, Jett might not be the most durable agent, but actually hitting her is going to be the hard part.
Together, we'll crush them.
Harbor is the highest I put a human on this list, and that's because of the incredible relic that he wields. This thing wasn't built by any sort of technology that we understand, and instead it's an ancient artifact from the Astral Guardians. This artifact has bonded to him, and from what we know, it's from a similar line as things like Astra's Gauntlet and Yoru's Mask. The main thing holding him back is that he still seems to be learning how to fully control this thing. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that Harbor is not using this to its maximum potential yet. Even with that limitation though, what he can already do is pretty impressive. His bracelet summons the water, and then the rings allow him to control and manipulate it into different shapes, whether that's a wall, shield, or wave. He can even control the temperature of the water, although again, he's still getting the hang of making it boiling or freezing. Even if we ignore the artifact for a second though, he actually has a very solid background. Before joining the protocol, Harbor was an agent for Realm. They specialized in retrieving artifacts and stopping them from getting on the black market, so this involved a lot of field experience and gunfights. Due to the events of when the artifact bonded to him, he even became a fugitive for 2 months. He spent this time on the run evading his former colleagues and staying one step ahead of them. During this time, there are reports of him facing down a dozen men at once, summoning towering walls of water and crashing them through their ranks. Overall, Harbor has a surprisingly strong combination of powers and experience, although he still needs to learn to master these and is only a human at the end of the day.
All paths end with me.
Vice has a pretty unique power, manipulating a radiant-infused carbon metal alloy. She can unleash torrents of liquid metal, reshaping it and then weaponizing it. She turns it into anything from barriers to thorns. While in the grand scheme of things she hasn't been on the protocol for a very long time, we can infer how powerful she is due to just how much effort the Scions of Hourglass went to when they locked her up. They built a special cryogenic containment unit just for her, and this even contained liquid nitrogen, which essentially rendered her powers inert. We do also have multiple feats of strength from her though. Not only was she able to hold her own against both Jett and Chamber, but when she escaped captivity, she went to town on the Scions, tracking down 2 of their secret bases and absolutely laying waste to them. While we never see exactly what she did, it's implied to have been pretty graphic and confronting for those on scene. I think it's also worth pointing out how smart Vice is. She's an ex-Kingdom scientist with a deep understanding of the Interverse. Ultimately, I'm not factoring that too much into her placement, but I'd put her on a similar level to Viper intelligence-wise, but then look at what else she can do. With her revenge-driven ruthlessness and liquid metal manipulation, I think it's fair to say that Vice deserves her spot here.
I am both shield and sword.
Sage is another complicated one to rank. Most people think of her as just a healer, but her powers actually go a lot further than that. Sage is in fact a geomancer, meaning her radiant power is connected to manipulating the earth. More specifically, she's able to channel that power through orbs of pure crystallized radianite, which allows her to create physical structures in the world, heal people, and even bring people back from the dead. This makes her one of, if not the most important people in the whole protocol, which funnily enough is exactly what is happening in the lore right now. Sage's powers are reaching their breaking point and she's hurting herself due to the extent that she's using them at. It feels like something big is about to happen as she returns to where she got her training from, so just keep in mind that I'm making this video before we get what will probably be a fairly big lore drop and cinematic. Still though, it's not like we have nothing to work with in terms of what her powers can do, and people often overlook her defensive capabilities and environmental control. She manifests actual walls and barriers out of radianite, and in the lore she has raised these walls high and strong enough to hold back the rising tides on Pearl. We also know that she's not useless in a fight, just look at how strong she is in this Revelation cinematic. It's worth pointing out that both of those instances are Omega Sage rather than Alpha Sage, and that's just another level of nuance to this topic. Personally, I would say that if Omega Sage is capable of all this, then there's no reason why Alpha Sage couldn't do this too, but I understand if you disagree. Overall, I'm fascinated to see where her lore goes next, but for now, I think she's a little limited by the fact that she can only use her powers so much, And again, like Mix, she also operates on a different scale, with her powers being more supportive and defensive compared to the rest of the roster.
They have no idea how heartless I am.
Reyna feels very different to the other agents on this list because her power is simply predatory. Her entire existence is built around life energy. Whenever she kills someone, she can siphon the soul or life force from that enemy, using it to heal herself or become completely intangible. This gives her an interesting snowball element in a fight, which no one else really has. Most agents would presumably become more tired or worn out as the fight goes on, but Reyna literally lives for this and becomes stronger as people die around her. I think the dependency is another key element to this and is what drives Reyna. When I said before that she lives for this and was built for this, that wasn't an exaggeration. She will literally die if she does not get enough of that life energy, and the same goes for her little sister, Lucia. The thing is, Lucia is not strong enough to fight and gather any of this life energy, so instead Reyna has to do it for the both of them. Having said all of that, I think many of you will be surprised that she's relatively low on this list, even though this is just outside of the top 10 for now. A lot of Reyna's implied strength comes from her being a leader in the Radiant War, an event that takes place in KO's alternate timeline. This event suggests that Reyna is capable of becoming a full-scale revolutionary threat if pushed far enough. My only problem with giving this value is that we don't see how it happens, nor do we actually see her doing anything in this heightened power level. She's not mowing down waves of humans or taking on a swarm of people, she's just in a fight against KO. I can see why people would consider her to be stronger and can assume she's capable of doing a lot, but in our current reality and point in time, I think there are a lot of agents that can just do more than her.
Give them nothing.
Vito is a special case, because his abilities don't come from normal radiance, technology, or training. Instead, he's powered by a Radivore DNA mutation, giving him one of the most unusual power sources on the protocol. We don't know exactly how this mutation came to be, but we do know that it repaired damage to his body after he was hit by a grenade, giving him a new arm and a new eye. Not only that, but he is essentially able to nullify enemy powers, which is an especially interesting mechanic in the context of this video, which I'll talk about a lot more with KO. Vito's ability to evolve and become immune to almost anything seems to be pretty hard to define. We see him able to survive rocket launches and orbital strikes, but a simple bullet can put him down. Obviously this is to keep him balanced from a gameplay perspective, but from a lore perspective, he's relatively new and he seems like he should be durable, but we just don't know for sure. It's a shame that he's such a new agent because if he'd been in the game longer, we would likely have seen him in more cinematics doing various things, and then we could get a better idea of just how durable he is. Beyond that, we do know that Vito has extensive field experience. Before joining the protocol, he worked in a unit with Tejo and Waylay, on various missions in locations we're familiar with, like Split and Sunset. When he joined the protocol, he was first contacted to be a bodyguard for Phoenix's sister, which goes to say a lot about just how trusted and capable he is. Vito does sound immensely powerful within the world of Valorant, and don't get me wrong, he is, but I think he is too much about denial and countering to be higher on this list. I'll be raising a similar point shortly with KO, but Vito isn't about oozing massive levels of power or warping reality. Instead, he's just durable and brings the fight onto his terms.
Let's do this.
Now, if you thought Clove or Reyna was a divisive topic, it's finally time to talk about KO. He is a cybernetic war machine from an alternate future, built with one very specific purpose: neutralizing radiance. This makes him basically a direct counter to everyone above him and a lot of people below him on this list. He uses polarized radianite energy to disable even the strongest of agents, like Astra for example. So with that being said, I can see how someone would simply place KO at the top of the list and call it a day, but I don't want it to be that simple. Like I said at the start of this video, it's not just about who beats who, but it's about what else they can actually do. So what else can KO do, you might ask? Let's see. He's got a flashbang and a grenade, and he is physically superior to an average human for a start. We hear him jump from a helicopter at a great height and land completely fine, giving him one of the most cut and dry arguments for durability out of anyone on the roster. On top of that, if he is downed, he can be restabilized, so even destroying him temporarily does not always end the problem, he can be rebuilt. His anti-radiant feats are not just theoretical either. We know that he comfortably took out Fade, and in his own timeline he claims to have killed Reyna. That already brings us back to the fact that his whole purpose is just killing radiance, that's it. Otherwise he's just a very strong robot, stronger than a normal human. So my problem is, I just think that killing radiance is far too specific of a use case to be objectively powerful in multiple scenarios. Like, again, I understand this is very strong within the world of Valorant in itself, everything is about radiance, but as far as I'm concerned, there is more to power than just that. When we get to powers like Astra's or Neon's electricity or Yoru's dimensional hopping, I'd say those are all more objectively powerful than specifically countering radiance.
I don't try.
I do.
Waylay is where the speed scaling starts to get a little bit ridiculous, because with her powers she's more than just moving quickly, she seems to transform into pure light itself. This immediately gives her one of the strongest mobility arguments in the entire Valorant protocol. Dashes forward in a burst of light, retracts backwards literally as light, and then strikes down her targets with shards of light in the blink of an eye. In her reveal cinematic, she's just zipping through the city almost instantly. So from a speed perspective, Waylay is absurd. Her light manipulation also allows her to slow down enemies, giving her a lot of disruption and control of the battlefield. Waylay also has a strong experience argument. Like I mentioned earlier, she was in a squad with Tejo and Vito, but she even has a criminal past. Multiple territories are seeking her arrest for whatever she got up to before joining the protocol. The only reason I don't have her higher on this list is because we've only seen so much of what she can do. If we went purely off of how everyone's powers performed in theory, then she'd probably be higher than the next few agents, but as you'll see, they have more feats and things we've actually seen or heard them do compared to Waylay.
Alright, where's the fight?
Skye is an agent who is a lot stronger than she probably seems at first. Her power isn't really about the little trinkets themselves, instead they act like a conduit for her actual power of weaving life into them. In game we see this through various creatures like the hawk, Tasmanian tiger, and then whatever the hell the seekers are meant to be. She's also able to heal her allies, which once again brings us back to that point of how powerful is healing. From a lore perspective though, what Skye does is incredible. She's giving life to these carvings and controlling them with her own radiant power. This means that her ability is not limited to the specific animals that we see in game, these are just the forms that she chooses the most often. She has tried making other summons before, like dragons, but apparently that didn't end well. I know I said I wouldn't take potential into account much, however Skye's potential gets more focus in the lore than almost anyone else's. She herself is always talking about how she can be so much more, Omen says that there is a terrible beast inside her, and KO knows firsthand how strong she ends up. Even if we choose to ignore this potential, Skye has some pretty strong feats. She took out a horde of Atlas operatives to buy time for Harbor and Astra, which proves that she is beyond capable in the field. Just like Sage, she is more than just your healer, she can fight, summon, track, and survive under pressure. Her power also seems to be connected to life itself in some way. On Haven, she says that she can feel what this place used to be, but it's dying now. Another time she expresses this sense of life around her is when she says to Omen that she loses him when he teleports. Even if Skye can't summon dragons just yet, she deserves a spot this high on the list. She has an incredibly strong ability in life manipulation, and we have also heard her go wild and take out a bunch of enemies in the lore.
I am the beginning. I am the end.
Omen is shrouded in mystery, which makes him tough to place exactly on this list. We've learned a lot about his background over the years, but what he is now and what he can do still isn't clearly explained. We do know that he has a history with the Scions of Hourglass. Back when he was a human, he was one of their most ruthless assassins. There are some tall tales about him, but clearly he wasn't all that because Viper got the better of him and turned him into what we know today. He still does possess some of these skills though. Not only do we see him toying with the enemy in the Abyss trailer, but almost the entire Reckoning cinematic is just him working through this Hourglass penthouse filled with soldiers, and he doesn't seem too bothered by it. His ability to control the shadows and teleport across the battlefield makes him almost impossible to keep track of. Beyond just what we've seen in these cinematics though, there's something else entirely going on with his powers compared to the other Radiants. When Fade was blackmailing all the agents with dossiers, she classified him as a Radiant, but put a little asterisk next to it. He's not a normal Radiant in the same way Phoenix, Jett, or Skye is. He's described as a phantom of a memory, and his current state isn't all that stable. And his power is a double-edged sword. It takes a conscious effort to hold himself together. This instability matters because even though Omen has great power, it's not like it's effortless for him to wield. Similar to Skye, it's also interesting that he's implied to have a greater feeling for life itself. He knows when Sage is nearby due to her apparently pulling against the natural balance, and notes that the natural balance is preserved even when Clove comes back to life. I hope we get even more explanation someday about the true extent of Omen's powers. For now though, we know that he's got the physical skill set of an assassin, while also being able to blind you through walls and teleport around you. Good luck beating this guy.
Everyone is afraid of something.
Kicking off the top 5 is Fade, who wields the raw powers of fear and terror. Going up against Fade is more than just a physical confrontation. Instead, it is more like a full-on psychological warfare. She gets inside your head, learning your greatest fears, but not only learning them for herself, even showing them to you too. These is described as a knot of raw fear, and then both her Haunt and Prowler are nightmarish too. Then Nightfall is described as an unstoppable wave of nightmare energy. How do you even beat that? When a whole strike team consisting of Neon, Breach, Sova, Chamber, and Cypher came for her, she not only held her own but was even going to evade them entirely. The only reason she got apprehended is because of KO, who again is basically the perfect matchup. Whether she means it or not, Fade's nightmare powers basically just emit from her whole body. When she was taken in as a prisoner of the protocol before the other agents knew she was there, they could feel that she was there. People started having nightmares and doorknobs started turning cold just from her being in the general vicinity. She can peer into the minds of people and even can see the future, or at least sense events that are happening far away from her, since she described what was happening with Clove before we even knew who they were. One important thing to clarify with Fade though is she's not an actual mind reader, as her abilities only extend to fears. Unfortunately for Fade 2, just like Omen, there is a great personal cost for what she's able to do. Every time she sleeps she has nightmares, and at times she gets extremely tired and worn down. I still think that at her best, she's too good not to be up here though. Weaponizing pure fear and hunting people down with their own nightmares, Fade is absolutely one of the strongest agents in the protocol.
I'll fight anybody. I'll fight everybody.
It's hard to deny how powerful Yoru is when he can literally rip holes straight through reality. His natural radiance already allows him to tear small rifts in the fabric of our world, but his mask takes this even further. The artifact comes from his ancestors during the Edo period, and Yoru seems to be the only person capable of properly using its power. Using it, he can see between dimensions, drift into his own dimensional space, and travel through rifts in ways that no one else can. That alone puts him above almost everything else the rest of the agents are capable of. Whether he's teleporting back to his rift tether, deploying mirror images of himself, or tearing out an unstable dimensional fragment to blind people, he's got many ways to utilize these dimensional powers. Then of course his dimensional drift is in its own league, where he goes into his own dimension where he can't be perceived by anyone else. We've also seen that his mobility is insane. In the Duelist cinematic, Yoru is able to teleport out after being shot at, moving before the bullets even hit him. This gives him one of the best reaction and escape feats in the entire roster, especially when you consider he just disappears from one location and appears at another, rather than moving there super quickly like Jett or Neon. Despite all of this, he still isn't my top agent. He's clearly not a bad fighter and he's always going to be able to deceive you, but I think the other agents are measurably more powerful than him from what we've seen so far.
Enough training. It's time.
Aso might be a surprisingly high third placement to you, but when we take a look at what his powers actually do, even Sage is impressed by them. Before we get to his powers though, Aso was also an assassin for the Scions of Hourglass, just like Omen. Tales of his terror spread like legend, and he earned the nickname Dead Lilac. He was an elite hitman, and according to Omen, he has killed hundreds. So before we even get to his powers, we know that he's more than just good with a gun. The reason I rate him so highly is the nature of his radiance though. Aso is able to manipulate ambient radiant energy. More specifically, he can transmute that energy from intangible form into solid, durable constructs. Aso is able to reshape the structure of radiant itself and turn it into physical matter. The way he uses this ability makes him one of the most durable agents on the protocol, seeing as he's constantly able to shield himself in a number of ways. Not only that, but his ultimate, Kill Contract, is a marvel in itself. He's able to construct a stabilized reality in the interverse and transport both himself and someone else there. Sage considers him an architect in the truest sense of the word. That's why he's probably one of the scariest Valorant agents to fight. Not only does he just have an innate advantage with his elite assassin skill set, but due to his powers, he literally becomes bulletproof. This combination of an insanely strong power on top of incredible physical skills make him undeniably strong.
Move or get zapped.
Neon is so high up for one simple reason. Her raw power output exceeds anything else that we know. A lot of agents in Valorant are dangerous because of training, technology, or specific hacks, but Neon is different. She herself is the walking power source. Her body naturally generates bioelectric radiance, which Killjoy says is enlaced with the planet's own radianite mesh, or the layer that separates the realities of Alpha and Omega Earth. She contains so much power that she needs a surge protector to help her control the turbulent and extremely potent abilities. That already is a huge sign of how strong she is. Every other agent we've spoken about with some extra tech or tool uses that as the source or the amplifier for their powers. No one else needs something to limit their power like this. Even with the caps in place on her suit, she can apparently power a whole city block, including restaurants and hotels. If those caps ever come off for some reason, you can say goodbye to half of headquarters. She even jokes to Killjoy that her suit has like 1 billion volts, which might not be completely literal, but the point is obvious. Neon is outputting enough energy that anyone else touching her equipment is in big trouble. We do actually see her surge protector get damaged in the Shattered cinematic, enabling her to tear through these Atlas soldiers with ease. Because of this event, and while her surge protector was being repaired, Neon was forced to wait in a special containment room that could soak up all the extra volts she was naturally emitting. I haven't even mentioned the portal to Omega Earth yet. Killjoy was struggling to find a power source for this interversal portal, and it didn't seem like there was going to be an answer until they came across Neon. Even though she's young, it's not like she's a completely inexperienced fighter either, as she had some time with KSEC and got some training there. So again, Neon just has an incredible amount of power and the skills to back it up, but the fact that she's just in second place is no fault of her own.
I am on a higher plane, Charlie. Literally.
If you know anything about the Astral Guardians within Valorant's lore, it's no surprise that Astra is the most powerful amongst all the agents. Her role is to protect reality itself from events that could have universe-altering or interversal consequences, such as the portal between Alpha and Omega Earth. That alone just puts her above everyone else, because while most agents are dealing with missions, enemies, and battlefield threats, Astra is dealing with the stability of reality across the universes. Her powers also reflect that scale, since Astra seems to wield the energy of the cosmos itself. She plays around amid stars, manipulates gravity with the well, and can split vast areas in map with impenetrable cosmic matter. This is far beyond your average radiant power, which would just be, manipulating elements like fire or air, maybe even metal. Astra harnesses cosmic energy and interacts with reality from a higher plane than the rest of the roster. Her artifact is obviously important too. It's worth noting that she does have natural radiance of her own, but similar to Yoru, this golden gauntlet helps her properly use these powers. It's not like just anyone could have stumbled across this artifact and used it. Astra was drawn to it, and this is her purpose. Everyone on this list is powerful in some way or another, but I don't think any of them come even close to Astra, who is on a cosmic level. So that's how powerful I would measure all of the different agents to be in Valorant. I'm sure there are going to be people divided over certain agents, again like KO or Clove specifically, so let me know what you think of all of them. At the end of the day, I tried to be consistent with my logic, but I'm sure that there are things that I forgot or missed, so let me know of any other rankings that you would change.